On this week's episode of Ride the Lightning, the Tesla unofficial podcast, Tesla releases their Q1 delivery numbers and shows good progress on their production ramp while ultimately falling short of their projections. Plus, an update on the fatal Model X Autopilot crash, Elon Musk's April Fool's Day prank, and more. Howdy, friends. Welcome to Ride the Lightning. It is the Tesla Motors unofficial podcast, episode number 140 for April 8th, 2018. And while Daisy the Boxer Puppy looks out at the continuing rain here in San Francisco, it has rained quite literally all day today. I'm Ryan McCaffrey, and what better use of a day that's stuck inside in the rain, can't get the dog out, can't really have any fun, than to do this podcast. It's been another busy week of Tesla news, and I've actually had a great day. I am ready, willing, and eager to do a podcast here and get you the latest and greatest in the world of Tesla. Unfortunately, I do need to start with a follow-up to last week's tragic story regarding the fatal Model X crash. As poor luck would have it, it so happened that Tesla posted a second blog update on their website after I recorded, but before the show even went live for the general public. So unfortunately couldn't squeeze that update into things, but wanted to bring that to your attention now. You know, I want to make sure if I'm going to continue covering the story, which I will, but I don't want to just say something to say something. I want to make sure that there's a substantial update and something tangible to discuss. And with this second update from Tesla, there is just that. They posted again a follow-up blog entry, and here's an excerpt from it. Tesla saying, quote, "In the moments before the collision, which occurred at 9:27 a.m. on Friday, March 23rd, Autopilot was engaged with the adaptive cruise control follow distance set to minimum. The driver had received several visual and one audible hands-on warning earlier in the drive, and the driver's hands were not detected on the wheel for 6 seconds prior to the collision. The driver had about 5 seconds and 150 meters of unobstructed view of the concrete divider with the crushed crash attenuator, but the vehicle's logs show that no action was taken. The reason this crash was so severe is because the crash attenuator, a highway safety barrier which is designed to reduce the impact into a concrete lane divider, had been crushed in a prior accident without being replaced. We have never seen this level of damage to a Model X in any other crash," end quote. Now, this doesn't really answer the question of how this happened if Autopilot was engaged, even with the driver's hands not on the wheel for the moments prior to the accident. As you can tell, Tesla very intentionally steered clear, of presenting anything other than mere factual data from the logs that they've been able to recover. Because, it's quite frankly, I don't think it's their place to do any more than that. In fact, the government, the U.S. government, and that's, the traffic folks investigating this, they were not thrilled about Tesla even sharing this, which I can understand from their side, but I can also understand it from Tesla's side. You've got a lot of FUD out there, a lot of potential misinformation and misleading information, so I can understand both parties why Tesla would want to get out and share more information and why the government would not want that information shared. Probably because one of the consequences, well, not that I can claim a one-to-one correlation here, but a couple of people actually went out and tried to recreate this. Not the crash part, obviously, but the moments leading up to it to see what could have gone wrong. And, if you're the government, you don't want people going out and trying to recreate accidents based on, which they wouldn't have done if Tesla had not, let me rephrase that. They probably would not have done that had Tesla not released this information publicly about, the first update with those autopilot statistics and the second update about sort of the more specifics of the accident. So the government none too thrilled, but Tesla no doubt trying to protect their reputation a little bit. And we learn now that the follow distance, I mean, I can't imagine follow distance being set to minimum is ever really a good idea. It doesn't, I'm not a Tesla owner, so I can't say for sure with real world experience how that is on a day-to-day basis, but that doesn't seem like a good idea. I don't want to judge, but it's nevertheless, it's tragic. This whole thing is a terrible story, and the investigation will be ongoing, obviously, and I'll certainly pass along any key updates to this tragic story. One other thing to consider that I was thinking about with this, after the first autopilot-related fatality, that was, of course, Joshua Brown. Is that 2 years ago already? I think it is. Might be 2 years ago already. Elon and Tesla, they fundamentally went in and changed autopilot. Seemingly for the better, by the way, by changing the autopilot. That was the Autopilot 1 system. They changed it to a primarily radar-based system with the cameras supplementing it, supporting it, rather than it had been the reverse, where it was a primarily camera-based system with the radar supporting the camera work. So I'm left to wonder if Tesla might end up learning anything from this crash that will allow them to make some kind of tangible improvement to the system so that the system becomes safer for everyone, which, I think it's fair to say the Josh Brown fatality and that radar change probably has made the system tangibly better for everyone. I mean, not that you want to see anyone lose their life in order for these kinds of changes and improvements to happen, but better that Tesla can learn something that they can apply to the system than for them to learn absolutely nothing from this. Next story this week is related to Elon Musk, of course, the ever-present face of Tesla. He teased on Sunday of last week some, quote, important news in a few hours on Twitter. And this was on, I said Sunday, which was April Fool's Day, April 1st. So, of course, nobody, including myself, quite knew what to make of it. Was he going to put out, an April Fool's joke? That's it's April 1st and Elon's teasing something. Is he just going to be, having a go with his sense of humor? Or, given that it was April 1st and Tesla had just come off of a key first quarter of production, and everybody was curious. There was a lot of haterade being chugged by various folks, and there was the stock had taken a big hit, and there was a lot of interest around what those Q1 delivery numbers would be. So was Elon going to put out some kind of statement regarding that, and maybe he had some good news? Well, it turned out to indeed be an April Fool's Day joke. Elon made a series of tweets celebrating the April 1st holiday, as it were, by saying, he tweeted a little sort of mock press release on Twitter. Tesla goes bankrupt, Palo Alto, California, April 1st, 2018. Despite intense efforts to raise money, including a last-ditch mass sale of Easter eggs, we are sad to report that Tesla has gone completely and totally bankrupt. So bankrupt, you can't believe it. There are many chapters of bankruptcy, and as critics so rightly pointed out, Tesla has them all, including chapter 14 and a half, the worst one. Elon was found passed out against a Tesla Model 3, surrounded by Tesla-Quila bottles, the tracks of dried tears still visible on his cheeks. This is not a forward-looking statement because, obviously, what's the point? Happy New Month. And then, to finish up, Elon tweeted a picture of himself leaned up against a Model 3 with a sign around his neck. It was cardboard with a black Sharpie marker written on it, and it said, Bankwupt, BANKWUPT. And it turns out, by the way, that was all a goof, obviously, including the tequila, but now people said you should totally make that, and Elon being Elon, he is making Tesla-Quila. So look for that in the not-too-distant future. But this was certainly Elon having a bit of fun with both April Fool's Day and the haters, as Doug Field put it in the memo that I read to you last week, who you have likely seen are now very much pushing the Tesla will go bankrupt narrative. And if you notice, by the way, notice how those fudsters, as I like to call them, have really turned up the heat in the last couple weeks. Have you seen that? I've definitely noticed it. And it's no accident, in my opinion. It's because Tesla is this is my take now, obviously. To me, it's because Tesla is so close now to becoming completely unstoppable, completely beyond reproach from them, completely beyond being harmed by any sort of coordinated attack that those haters and shorts and fudsters could possibly muster. They are, in my opinion, desperate, and I think Elon knows it, and I think he's having a bit of fun with them, which, quite frankly, I can't blame him for doing in his position. I mean, some might counsel him to simply ignore them, to stay quiet, to soldier on, but Elon's a human being. He's a high-profile, very, very publicly visible human being, and I don't blame. And we know his sense of humor as well. We've gotten to know him over the years, at least what he puts forward publicly, and he does. He has a cheeky sense of humor. He likes to do this kind of stuff, and I think it was very much in good spirits and in fun, but yet just getting some ribbing in there on those fudsters and haters and shorts. Now, that said, that being Tesla not being bankrupt, challenges do remain, certainly. And Elon says that he has broken out his sleeping bag and is sleeping on the Model 3 production line. And again, you think he's kidding. He's not. Remember when he tweeted that he was sleeping on the roof of the Gigafactory? He did. When he slept on the Model X production line, he actually did that. So he's not kidding around. Tesla's Q1 delivery numbers have been announced by the company. And as expected, as I mentioned last week, and I was certainly far from the only person to expect this, they were indeed off of their targets, as a number of folks did suspect. But they are really making fantastic progress. So this is a quote from Tesla here from the statement, the press release, as it were. Q1 deliveries totaled 29,980 vehicles, of which 11,730 were Model S, 10,070 were Model X, and 8,180 were Model 3. Q1 production totaled 34,494 vehicles, a 40% increase from Q4, and by far the most productive quarter in Tesla history, thanks obviously to the ramping up of the Model 3. 24,728 vehicles were Model S and Model X, and 9,766 were Model 3. So the disparity there between the delivery and the production is obviously some cars are in transit at the end of the quarter. Continuing, quote, the Model 3 output increased exponentially, representing a four-fold increase over last quarter. This is the fastest growth of any automotive company in the modern era. If this rate of growth continues, it will exceed even that of Ford and the Model T. And a couple of other things here. Quote, we were able to double the weekly Model 3 production rate during the quarter by rapidly addressing production and supply chain bottlenecks, including several short factory shutdowns to upgrade equipment. In the past 7 days, meaning the last 7 days leading up to the end of the quarter, Tesla produced 2,020 Model 3 vehicles. In the next 7 days, we expect to produce 2,000 Model S and X vehicles and 2,000 Model 3 vehicles. It is a testament to the ability of the Tesla production team that Model 3 volume now exceeds Model S and Model X combined. What took our team 5 years for the S and X took only 9 months for Model 3, which you remember that was my point from, I think it was last week, maybe the week before, but good stuff there. A little bit more, quote, Given the progress made thus far and upcoming actions for further capacity improvement, we expect that the Model 3 production rate will climb rapidly through Q2. Tesla continues to target a production rate of approximately 5,000 units per week in about 3 months, laying the groundwork for Q3 to have the long-sought ideal combination of high volume, good gross margin, and strong positive operating cash flow. As a result, Tesla does not require an equity or debt raise this year apart from standard credit lines. End quote on that. So as you can see there, they're backing off, explicitly saying that they will be at 5,000 Model 3s per week by the end of Q2, and instead using approximately and in about 3 months. Also, I do have to wonder if there's a little subtext or a little reading between the lines to be done here, and that Tesla is going to successfully be able to manipulate deliveries and to certain countries and what have you. And if that tax credit, that 200,000th, let me say that properly, that 200,000th USA delivered Tesla vehicle doesn't happen until July 1st. Because remember, if that happens, then it's the full tax credit for any Tesla delivered between up until the end of calendar 2018. And when you see here that's, they're saying laying the groundwork for Q3 to have the long sought ideal combination of high volume, good gross margin, strong positive operating cash flow. So if they can arrange it so that the tax credit doesn't trigger until July 1, and they're making about 5,000 Model 3s per week, then in addition to a couple of thousand S's and X's per week, you're going to have a lot of American customers benefiting from that final wave of the $7,500 federal tax credit. So I'll be keeping my eye, everybody will be keeping our eyes very, very close on that. Continuing here, 2 other points that Tesla called out in their press release. They say, quote, "The quality of Model 3 coming out of production is at the highest level we have seen across all our products. This is reflected in the overwhelming delight experienced by our customers with their Model 3s. Our initial customer satisfaction score for Model 3 quality is above 93%, which is the highest score in Tesla's history." End quote. And then one other thing, quote, "Net Model 3 reservations remain stable through Q1. The reasons for order cancellation are almost entirely due to delays in production in general and delays in availability of certain planned options, particularly dual motor all-wheel drive and the smaller battery pack. As described above, owner happiness with the product is extremely high." End quote. Now, that to me sounds like Tesla is acknowledging that they have had a number of cancellations. Whether that's 1% of the reservations or 5% or something else, I don't know. But they're also saying that they've had enough new reservations coming in that it sounds like it's more or less offset those cancellations. Also, Tesla notes that this makes the Model 3 the best-selling electric vehicle in America. And if you're scratching your head at that, because of the numbers I read to you just a few minutes ago, remember that half, or in this past quarter, in Q1, perhaps even more than half of Model S and Model X's were delivered outside of the US, whereas every single Model 3 in Q1 was delivered in America. Anyway, Wall Street seemed pretty convinced by this statement, as the bleeding on the stock seemed to stop. In fact, it's rebounded quite a bit, not all the way, but quite a bit as of this recording, which is the end of the week on Wall Street. Now, the big question for Q2, besides the 200,000th car situation that I mentioned about, is the thing I wanted to bring up was the 93% customer satisfaction score for Model 3 quality. That jumped out at me because that's obviously an internal survey metric of some sort. I'm interested in when the customer is polled for that. Are they polled a day after they take delivery, a week later, a month later? I mean, it can't be that long because all these cars are brand new and they're getting enough data to report it in a quarterly delivery statement. Now, I'm not here to cast doubt on their figure. I don't mean to do that. That's not my intention here. But I think it is fair to try and put that in the proper context, because I suspect most people are pretty super satisfied with just about any new car that they get in that initial honeymoon period with it, right? I mean, if any Tesla sales advisors or maybe even internal Tesla corporate folks out there may be listening and may have any information that they'd like to share with me about how that figure comes about, how that surveying works. If you want to share it with me on the record or even just on background, please drop me a line. I'm just more curious than anything else. I'm not calling BS. I'm not looking for any conspiracy theories. It's just, I kind of looked at that and went, well, wait a second. These cars have barely been out. I mean, when are they polling people? Because, most people are probably pretty super stoked about their cars in that initial time period after they get them. Anyway, also this week, a little, but actually kind of a big deal Model 3 software update released this past week that I wanted to pass along because it's good news for all of us, whether you have the car already or whether you're waiting to take delivery. And that is the steering wheel. Those scroll wheels, they can now be used to adjust traffic adaptive cruise control, follow distance, and cruising speed. So yes, that means when you've got autopilot on, you can use those scroll wheels. So you go up or down on the right scroll wheel to adjust your speed while autopilot's on, and you press the left or right buttons to decrease or increase your follow distance. So really glad to have that off of the screen and onto the steering wheel, because I mean, you may remember that after my first time behind the wheel of a Model 3, which was back in early November, I came on the show here and I called that out as like the number one seemingly obvious flaw with an equally obvious fix. That was exactly what I proposed, and I was no rocket scientist in proposing that. Plenty of others have called for the same. Now, many reviews of the car and impression posts have mentioned that exact same thing. And so it's great that Tesla has indeed addressed that fairly quickly. One other thing too, speaking of software updates, people, when a big update comes out, like the Autopilot update, the 2018.12 update, these updates come out, they're rolled out in waves to the fleet, so that presumably it's maybe a bandwidth concern to manage the bandwidth on the network, which is, with AT&T, but also it probably is because if some bug crops up, something they didn't catch, then not the entire fleet isn't affected. It's only a small section of the fleet. They can catch it and stop the software from rolling out to the rest of the fleet. So when there is a big update, though, a lot of people, they want it. They're like, hey, man, what new Autopilot update that makes Autopilot substantially better. Oh, I want that. But you got to just wait for your car to get the update sent to it. Well, our friend DJ Harbaugh from, of course, Tesla Tidbits, his daily Tesla podcast, he's in North Central Ohio. He reached out to Elon and said, hey, it would be great if you could request the update from your car for that kind of situation. And Elon wrote back and said, yes, they will. He was going to add that to the queue, and at some point, hopefully sooner rather than later, you will be able to request an update from within your car. So that is very, very cool stuff there. I think that, because, why not? Let the in the grand scheme of things, most people probably won't use that feature, but you get the hardcore folks, the real enthusiasts, the super fans like us, like all of us, who, were on top of this stuff week in and week out, and a big new autopilot update hits, and it's like, oh man, I want that now. And so you can ping that. Whereas, your mom, your dad, your whoever has their Model 3 and their car just updates. And they're not quite as down in the trenches like we are here in the world of Tesla. So that is a cool feature. Great suggestion by DJ, and awesome of Elon to not only respond, but to agree with DJ on that. So hopefully we'll see that brought to life here in the not too distant future. Last story for you this week before I move on to yet another outstanding Ride the Lightning hotline section with so many excellent calls from you guys. Remember the Sonic Carbon 20-inch sport wheels that I told you about a month or so ago? Something like that. Well, they've been spotted in the wild for the very first time, and they've been spotted on the Model 3 belonging to none other than Tesla chief designer Franz von Holzhausen. There's a beautiful picture of them, multiple angles actually, online. Now, you remember, he had been previously rocking the silver 20-inch wheels, like, the same type that were on the original silver Alpha prototype. But he has since swapped those with the Sonic Carbon versions. And I know what you're thinking, and I'll say I don't think that they were just powder-coated because, believe me, if you see the picture, these Sonic Carbon wheels look way too much like factory original wheels. They don't look like an aftermarket job in any way, shape, or form. And also, just because I told you, I was tipped off and passed that along to you guys. I know those are real. The Sonic Carbon, that's a real option. So it makes perfect sense that they would show up on the chief designer's car. So what happened was photos of Franz's car were posted online after, get this, he stopped by one of the Los Angeles area delivery centers and decided to randomly serve as the delivery specialist for one very lucky new Model 3 owner. And I'm super happy for the person, but I was just like, oh, please let that happen to me too. Please let that happen to me too. But what happened was, while some people were enjoying the pictures of Franz's car, it's customized, by the way. He's done a chrome delete on there in addition to those Sonic Carbon 20s. But most people were just saying like, hey, check out Franz's customized Model 3. It's pretty cool. I took a look at it, and I think there's more going on. So we'll see if history proves me right or wrong on this, but I actually think that Franz's car that was photographed, I think it was a sneak preview of the performance package. I don't know when it's going to happen, but I think that's what it was, because while, yes, Chrome Delete is highly unlikely to be a factory option, you've got the Sonic Carbon 20s, probably going to be a part of the performance package by default. Franz's car also had a carbon fiber spoiler on the trunk lid, just like, very similar to what you can get only with a P100D Model S. So it would make perfect sense that on the performance package for Model 3, there would be a carbon fiber spoiler. That's a nice subtle little way of telling everybody that, hey, this is a performance Model 3, especially if Tesla chooses to not badge the performance vehicle the way they're currently not badging the Model 3s. And Franz's car also had red brake calipers, and it was sitting noticeably lower than a standard Model 3, which, yes, could mean that he put lowering springs on the car, or it could mean that car has smart air suspension on it and it was set to low, and that because I think the air suspension is certainly going to be a part of the performance package, because it may very well be a part of the dual motor package as well. So bookmark this thought of mine, and maybe it's just wishful thinking, time will tell, but let's revisit it once we finally get some concrete details on the performance Model 3. whenever that'll be. Hopefully sooner rather than later. All right, be right back with the Ride the Lightning hotline for you right after this. Before I get to the Ride the Lightning hotline, all April long, I'm telling you about Evoto. Yes, if you find yourself in or around Montreal, it's a beautiful city. As I've said, I've been there a number of times on business. So if you're in town, get yourself a Tesla through Evoto. You can rent a car from them. They are a car rental service inspired by Tesla themselves, both in the customer service and sustainability department. They've got S's to rent, X's to rent. They've got Model 3s on the way. They'll bring the car to you if you do a rental through them, and you get unlimited mileage during your rental period. They plant 10 trees for every rental in partnership with trees.org. They also have merchandise at evoto.ca/merch. They've got some, I took a look at it actually. It's pretty good. It's not just Evoto stuff. Like if you don't care about their brand, there's some cool, just sort of like Mars inspired, SpaceX inspired, kind of those 50s sci-fi looking t-shirts and that kind of thing. They've got some mugs. They've got some Boring Company inspired stuff in there as well. So good stuff. So rent yourself a Tesla if you're in or around Montreal through evoto.ca. So take a look at their website, learn more, evoto.ca. And remember, if you're shopping the merch, there's a coupon code. The coupon code is RTL, and you get 15% off of any merch you want to pick up there. So check that out. All right, Ride the Lightning hotline time. 10 calls. That has been the number that I feel like that I feel good about. Kind of makes for about a 50-50 split with the news and the hotline section of the show. Let's get right to it. But before I do, real quick, I got to tell you how to participate. If you're a regular listener, pardon me, you probably already know this, but I would love to hear from you with any Tesla-related questions, comments, discussion topics. You can participate easily in a couple of different ways. One, you can use your smartphone's built-in voice recorder, record something, try to keep it to about a minute, maybe 90 seconds tops, and email that recording to me at teslapodcast@gmail.com. Or you can call in on the toll-free number. You just call in, you leave a message, that's it. That toll-free number is 1-888-989-8752. That's 1-888-989-TSLA. And if you know someone special with an upcoming birthday, anniversary, graduation, or some other special occasion, you can give them a unique gift of recorded voices from friends and family telling them why they're special. The recordings can be podcasted or put onto a keepsake. Visit lifeonrecord.com if you'd like to learn more. Kicking it off here with Brian in Northern Virginia. He's got a brand new Model S that he's got a couple of questions about. Brian, you're on the air.
Hi, Ryan. This is Brian from Northern Virginia, just outside of Washington, D.C. Thanks for the great podcast. And I've got a question that maybe you and or some listeners can help with. I've got a relatively new Model S, and I'm trying to figure out which versions of various kinds of software and so forth that I have. Now, I am well aware that I can look on the screen by touching the Tesla icon, and I can see that I have the 2018.10.4.8 BBDC66 update on the main screen. However, I cannot figure out how to tell, do I have the new MCU that you were discussing in one of your recent issues, one of your recent episodes of the podcast, or do I have Autopilot 2 Plus, which you discussed as well? I just can't figure out where all of the software updates and versions and so forth, and even hardware, I suppose. Is there some place that you can call up and have the computer kind of show you, like your iPad will show you everything it has and what the version number is of all the component parts of software and hardware? Anyway, that's my question, and I'd welcome anything anybody can share on that subject. Again, thanks for the good podcast. Talk to you later.
Hi, Brian. I am happy to help you here. You already know where to look for the firmware, and it sounds like you don't have the big new autopilot update yet. That is, as I mentioned earlier in the show, 2018.12. You may you may want to take advantage of that upcoming feature that Elon mentioned that they'll be doing, where you can just request an update from within your car. Anyway, but you may very well have had 2018.12 pushed to you by the time you hear this podcast. Now, the other two things you mentioned are actually hardware. I'd need to know exactly when you took delivery of your Model S to concretely answer both of these, but odds are you do have Autopilot 2.0, possibly even the 2.5 revision, but you probably don't have the new MCU because that only just rolled out in the S and the X. You'd have had to take delivery of your car in like the last month or maybe even less to have the new MCU. Now, it is very easy to tell if you have Autopilot 2.0 or higher because you can just look on the outside of the car. If you have cameras in the B pillars, between the front door windows and rear door windows, as well as cameras in the side marker turn signals on each of the front fenders, then you've got an Autopilot 2.0 or higher car. Autopilot 1 cars don't have those B-pillar cameras, and those side markers don't have cameras on them. Instead, it's just all silver with a T logo, and it serves as a turn signal. There's no camera there. So, Brian, I hope that helps. Thanks for calling in. Next up is Tom from Chicago, wants to talk about convincing a significant other with regard to a Tesla purchase. Tom, go ahead.
Hey Ryan, it's Tom from Chicago. Thanks again for the Model 3Q feedback. As such, I've started to compile my sales pitch for the wife. And since I know you've had to go through a similar exercise with yours, I was wondering what tactics you may have employed or what features and benefits you touted to make that sales pitch to the wife. Or really any listener out there, what things have you found successful when having that conversation with your significant other on purchasing a Tesla vehicle? And then also to respond to Jerome from Northern California naming the next-gen Roadster. I'm kind of leaning towards Roadster 1, as in keeping the same thematic with Spaceballs. Spaceball 1 was the name of the spaceship that went flat in the movie. Number 1 could also invoke themes of keeping top priority or number 1 over ICE cars. So Roadster 1 is what sounds good to me. Curious in your thoughts on both topics. Thanks for your good advice, Ryan. Later.
Hey, Tom. There is a whole big thread on this that has some pretty good discussion over on the Tesla Motors Club forums. If you head into the Model 3 section there and search for how to convince my wife to get a Model 3, that will pull up the thread for you. And I would remind you and me and everybody else that every person in every relationship is obviously different. So what was a good tact for the discussion with my wife might not work for you with yours, or vice versa. But for me, if I could just give some sort of general advice, I'd say I would just tell her how much it means to you, number one. And then I would go ahead, because that's an intangible benefit, right? That's not a practical thing. I would then, after that, focus primarily on the hard, tangible benefits. Safety, number one. The lower cost of operation, including the fuel costs. To give you an example here, I did the math on fuel costs for myself. I figured out that a 300-mile charge on my Model 3, now granted, I won't be using it that way. You top it up every night. You leave your garage every day with a full charge, but just for the sake of argument, you can do it this way. So a 300-mile charge on my Model 3 would cost me, in other words, a fill-up, essentially. That will cost me about $9 at my local electricity rates on an EV plan, charging the car overnight when the EV plan kicks in with its low prices. Right now, with my gasoline car, costs me $50+ in gas to go that same distance, because my my car, I got to fill up about every 300 miles. You multiply that, you take that difference. I mean, you are talking about a effectively $40+ difference per refuel, regardless of which car you're talking about. But yeah, you're talking about $40 difference. And I fill up, I don't know about you, you may be different, but depending on how many miles you drive, I fill up 2 to 3 times a month. So you're talking $80 to $120 a month. Let's split the difference and call it $100 a month savings times 12 months, $1,200 a year, 10 years of the car, $12,000. Now, you may have a much more fuel-efficient gasoline-powered car that you're replacing. My 2006 Infiniti G35, which, I bought my first ever new car that I bought when I was 26 years old. It's very much a car that a 26-year-old single guy at the time would buy. It gets 20 miles to the gallon if I'm lucky. So, most people are probably driving a more economical car. But anyway, you get where I'm going with this. There's some serious savings to be had, some very practical, tangible benefits that you can tell your wife about. As to your Roadster 1 idea, calling it the Roadster 1, I love your nod to Spaceballs. Don't get me wrong on that. But respectfully, I think it would just be too confusing if you tried to call the new one the Roadster 1. So I don't know. I think we can keep iterating on this. We can keep going. Anyway, Tom, thank you so much for the call. Let me go next to Ron in Nashville, who wanted to react to Nate from Houston from last week regarding the lack of a spare tire in a Tesla vehicle. Ron, go ahead.
Hey, Ryan, this is Ron from Nashville. Just finished your most recent podcast. Thanks a lot. And I had a comment about the caller who was concerned about no spare tire. So I had bought a car several years ago for the first time that had no spare, and likewise, I was a little worried about that. So what I did at that time is bought a little air compressor, and we're also AAA members. But and fortunately, I never needed it. But I got used to the fact that I didn't have a spare in a car, and it didn't take very long. Similarly, when I sold my Leaf and got my Tesla Model S, I realized there's no spare, and now we and my wife also has a Model S, and we both have a plug kit and a compressor in our cars, and we've been on long road trips. We've taken both our cars to Florida and back, and we don't even really think about it anymore. It's I know that's something that's hard for somebody who's not used to it to get used to, but in my opinion, it doesn't take long to get used to that. And because the chance of something like that happening with your car is so low, I don't think that should be something that should be a primary motivator to dissuade somebody from getting a Tesla. Enjoy the podcast. Thanks. Take care. Bye.
Thanks for calling in, Ron, and I hope that Nate feels a bit reassured after hearing from a fellow listener on this. And I actually forgot I can chime in on this a little bit myself. The car that my Model 3 will be replacing, the aforementioned 12-year-old Infiniti G35, it's got a donut spare tire that lives under the trunk carpeting. And Nate, if you're out there and it makes you feel any better, I have never once needed it in those 12 plus years of driving that car. Now, on that note, if you will excuse me, I have to go furiously knock on wood so as not to jinx myself on that for the remainder of the time that I own that car. Oh, actually, my desk here is wood. Hang on. Okay, there we go. That should do it. Anyway, getting back to this, Joe, our friend Joe from eMotion Rentals, he wanted to chime in a little bit more. He's got a little bit more information to add to this in reaction to Nate's call about that lack of a spare tire in a Tesla. So, Joe, take it away.
Hi, Ryan. This is Joe from eMotion Rentals. I'm responding to Nate's call about the lack of a spare tire in Tesla vehicles. And I wanted to provide a couple of thoughts that might help him out. Tesla provides for all new vehicles under warranty free roadside assistance, and that includes free flat tire towing and repair. Now, obviously, it's faster for him with a spare to replace the tire than it is to get towed, but Tesla has some unique things that make it just a little less painless. So if the tire can be repaired, they'll tow you to the tire repair store of your choice up to 50 miles at no cost. But in the example that Nate provided with a tire that's completely destroyed, they'll actually bring a replacement tire on a wheel already inflated to you, slap that on the vehicle, and send you on your way. And then they'll take the tire that's destroyed and your rim to Tesla. Tesla will put a new tire on that rim, and then you can pick up your rim and the tire at Tesla, and they'll do the swap out for you at no additional charge. Obviously, you have to pay for the tire mounting and balance because you destroyed the tire, but they don't charge you any extra for that service of having it delivered to Tesla and then you picking up from Tesla. So it's a really great program that helps speed things and help people get on their way a little more quickly. One other thing I might mention, and I apologize for the long call here, but some states, like the state of Maryland where I live, they actually require either a spare tire or a tire repair kit in all new vehicles. So Tesla is required to provide you that tire repair kit that you mentioned, Ryan. They're required to provide that for free with all new vehicles that they sell in Maryland. Not sure about Nate's state, but he might want to check the rules for his Department of Motor Vehicles and see what they say. And he might find that not having a spare tire on a Tesla really actually doesn't pose that much of a problem because Tesla has thought about a lot of these things. Thanks for taking my call, Ryan. Bye-bye.
Thanks for this info, Joe. I couldn't find anything when I went searching for states that require a spare or a repair kit to be included with the car. I'm not saying you're wrong, certainly not, but I'd be curious what the other states are so that I can pass that information along to my audience. If you or anyone else out there happens to know about that, I'd love to collect that information. And I did multiple Google searches. You'd think something like that would pop up, but I could not find it. Anyway, I did not know that Tesla included that as part of the roadside service that they do offer with the warranty. I mean, I think I just sort of seen that in passing, like, Tesla roadside assistance, but I never thought that it was sort of a service. I don't know, I just never put two and two together on that. So that's awesome news. I learned something today, which means it was a good day. I always appreciate it when I learn something, especially when it's about Tesla, so I can hopefully do a better podcast here. Next up, let's move to Zach in Richmond, replying to Michael from Millbray's call about adding autopilot in an aftermarket way, like after delivery. Zach, I called out, I made the call for looking for insurance agents, insurance brokers. Zach has answered that call. Zach, please inform me.
Hey, Ryan, this is Zach from Richmond, Virginia. I wanted to call and respond to Michael's question regarding the insurance and adding the full self-driving with autopilot afterwards. I am an insurance agent with Liberty Mutual Insurance. So, of course, they've got a relationship with Tesla. And in addition to that, I represent a few other companies. So I've got a little bit of experience with this where did want to address firsthand that adding aftermarket equipment is something that you can cover on an insurance policy. It's very simple. It's called adding an endorsement, and then you basically have to value whatever the equipment was that was added. So that it is something that can be covered. But secondly, you have to look at the issue in two different ways. The first being the expense of the vehicle itself should it ever need to be repaired. And of course, having the hardware already there isn't going to be a significant change in the value of, the Tesla that somebody owns. But then outside of that, most insurance companies haven't caught up. they'll have questions related to whether there's blind spot monitoring or does the car have the ability to brake, early in terms of prevention to avoid a collision. They have not caught up and asked any questions related to even semi-autonomous features other than those. So I don't think it's going to be an issue if somebody got it after the fact. I definitely think it's something that we can very easily add to a policy and make sure that there's coverage for that. So hopefully that clears it up, and maybe you'll, kind of land on one side of the fence on this issue. Happy Easter. Hope you have a great day.
This is another one of those wonderful, educational, I have nothing to add to this calls. Thank you very much, Zach. That is great information. Next up, Joe in Cortland Manor, New York, who has a little bit of a Tesla-related dilemma on his hands. See if I can help him out. Joe, you're on the air.
Hey, it's Joe Dropkin from Cortland Manor, New York. Responding to Elon's comments at South by Southwest, I don't know now if I should get a used S or wait for my long-range dual-motor Model 3. What would be the equivalent S? Thanks. Love the show.
Joe, welcome to the podcast. This exact question has crept into my own head on a handful of occasions, particularly when the Model 3 delays have happened. But it's the cost of an equivalent Model S that always stops the thought for me right in its tracks. Technically speaking, with the range being the thing, I think it's fair to say the range is the thing that you pay the most for on a Tesla. The Model S 100D, not the performance, the 100D is the closest thing to a Model 3 long-range dual motor car. That 100D has 335 miles of range next to the Model 3 long-range dual motor. We know it's 310 for the rear-wheel drive long range. It may be even 315 or so, maybe a tick higher when you have that second, more efficient motor up there. But when you add in autopilot, it is a long, long way from the Model 3 that you describe. Adding in autopilot on the 100D Model S, I should say. Because the Model 3, a well-equipped dual-motor long-range Model 3 should end up, if you load it up, it's probably going to be in the high 60s. That's about where we're looking for that price-wise. An equivalent Model S is $100,000 if you get it in any color but black. I actually put it together in the design studio. If you do it in black, it's $99,000 and that's without the premium package. That's a little bit more stripped down. So I think the only way to do what you're thinking of doing might be to look at a CPO 90 kilowatt hour Model S, but that's still going to be quite a bit more money-wise, and you probably wouldn't be getting Autopilot 2 out of that, nor would you quite be getting the long-range Model 3's 310-mile range. So depending where you are on the Model 3 wait list, it might still make sense for you to try and stretch out for a used Model S, if you're way down that list somewhere, depending on when you reserve. But there are a lot of considerations either way with that. Best of luck to you in whatever you decide, Joe. Got a few more calls left. Let me go next to Josh from Raleigh. Got his Model 3 and wants to talk about one particular aspect of it that he feels does not get brought up very often. So Josh, the floor is yours.
Hey Ryan, this is Josh giving you a call from Raleigh. I took delivery of my Model 3 last week and I am so happy with it. It's kind of a surreal experience to have been listening to it. It's kind of a surreal experience to have been listening to this podcast for so long, just dreaming of driving down my Model 3, just down the road, and then it actually happens. Kind of hard to explain the emotions you go through doing that. You're excited, sweaty and nervous, wanting to throw up because you don't want anything to happen to your brand new Model 3. But yeah, the car is everything others have called in and talked about. It is just stunning to look at. It looks like a piece of art when you look at it in person. The glass in the cabin is just stunning. And one feature that I haven't heard a lot of people talk about is the air filtration on the Model 3. Now, it doesn't come with biodefense mode, but the cabin filter on the Model 3 is quite good. And actually, I think Tesla is being a bit coy on what exactly they did with the design of it. So in the owner's manual, here's what it says. It says the Model 3 has an air filter that prevents pollen, industrial fallout, road dust, and other particles from entering through the vents. The air filter should be replaced when necessary. Contact Tesla. So industrial fallout, that sounds a bit coy to me. I know it's not like, nuclear fallout or, bioweapons defense mode, but whatever they did to the Model 3 filtration system, it is quite good. I have not noticed any diesel or exhaust fumes coming in. I was coming from a car where I had to put it on recirculated like 100% of the time, so I didn't smell those smells. And in the Model 3, yeah, it's not an issue. Didn't even realize the car wasn't on recirculated until about a week into ownership. So really happy with the car overall, and that feature especially is really awesome. Thanks for all the work you do, and looking forward to hearing more episodes of the podcast.
Congratulations, Josh. And I think surreal is a good way to describe it. Now, I'm not there yet myself, obviously, but if you remember back to the November episode after I had driven the Model 3 for the very first time, I talked about how I got a little emotional as I was driving that car for the very first time after dreaming of it for so long, all the things you mentioned in your call. And I think surreal would accurately describe that moment for me as well. So I imagine, too, that feeling is probably going to come back once that delivery day finally nears for me. But anyway, as for the HVAC system, that air filtration system, yeah, it is pretty darn cool, isn't it? I've gotten to play with it a little bit in the few times that I've driven the car. It's quiet, and it's really neat to be able to split the airflow into two streams and have it go really anywhere you want with pretty darn pinpoint accuracy. You can even direct it right through the steering wheel, which you can't do on literally any other car on the planet since no other car has an air vent there. I suspect that the HVAC is going to very quietly become a favorite feature for many people once they finally get their cars. Thanks so much for calling in, Josh. Let's go to our old friend Lawton in Chicago. Wanted to talk about the current state of fleet learning. Lawton, go ahead.
Hi, Ryan. It's Lawton from Chicago. Want to get your thoughts on the current state of Tesla's fleet learning to further improve autopilot. My condolences to the family of the driver killed near Mountain View, California. Hopefully, lessons learned from this tragic accident will further enhance the safety of Teslas for us all. On roads well traveled by Teslas, such as highways near San Francisco, given fleet learning, I would expect autopilot to work incredibly well. But for the road less traveled, do you have any insight into how well autopilot works and learns? Autopilot currently utilizes info from a variety of sources, including internal vehicle sensor data, third-party maps, and high-definition mapping data from the Tesla fleet. However, how dependent is autopilot on high-definition mapping data? For instance, if I'm the only Tesla that drives a rural road to work, will Tesla learn to drive the road solely based on my driving, or will it require multiple different Tesla vehicles to further validate the data? I would be curious to see if current owners are noticing improvements over time with regular autopilot use on their daily commutes, especially in rural areas. Thanks as always for all the passion and enthusiasm you put into the podcast each week. Look forward to your thoughts.
I haven't heard from you in a little while, Lawton. Thanks for calling in. For those that don't know, Lawton is probably my first regular caller, and I will always appreciate him for that. He always calls in with good, enthusiastic, well-thought-out questions. Anyway, Lawton, I don't actually know the answer to that question, I'm afraid. I've never read anything, and remember that I do read a lot in the Tesla community every day. I've never read anything about someone's car getting better on their own local road after continued autopilot usage. So I don't think the cars just learn on their own from the roads they travel. There would seem to be other data in play that pings back to the mothership in Palo Alto. And as you know, we just had a fairly substantial autopilot update, so it'll be interesting to see how long it is until the next big update. Is it going to be a month? Is it going to be 3 months? 6? We shall see. 2 more calls left for this edition of the Ride the Lightning Hotline. First up, Dave in Atlanta picked up his Model 3 and wanted to share some impressions of it. Dave, go ahead.
Hey, Ryan, it's Dave in Atlanta. Picked up my Model 3 yesterday and just enjoyed a wonderful Easter Sunday driving it around North Georgia mountains. One problem I had at delivery yesterday was that for some reason, even though Tesla called to confirm on Friday that we were good to go, there was some kind of miscommunication between my bank and Tesla. I ended up spending 3 hours at the Decatur Delivery Center waiting, and I have to feel that if it wasn't the end of the month, I might have gone home empty-handed. So absolutely make sure you check with your bank and you make sure with Tesla ahead of time that they have absolutely, positively everything in place so you don't get disappointed. In my case, after a 10-year wait since I first heard from the Roadster. Absolutely love the car. Autopilot is so much fun as I drive around these mountains. It was definitely worth waiting for, and I'm loving it. Thanks, Ryan. Talk to you later.
Congratulations, Dave. I can hear the joy in your voice, which, by the way, that is my favorite part of when people call in. I love hearing joy and happiness and enthusiasm. Many of you may not even realize how you sound, but I tell you, I'm being serious. It really lifts me up. I love it. And thank you very much, Dave, for the good reminder about double checking your loan/banking information before you go pick up your car. It's good advice for all of us. Now, this next call, I'm going to play this right into the segment break before we get to the end of the show. I don't have a reply to this, but this is Eric from Grand Rapids, Michigan, calling in to follow up on his own call about his really unfortunate Model 3 delivery, not delivery, that he had from last week. So we've got the part 2 to this story. Eric, take us home and into the next section.
Hi, Ryan. This is Eric from Grand Rapids, Michigan again. So, yep, there was a happy ending to the story. Got my Model 3 a few days later. The team at the Westmont Tesla Service Center was great. They kept me very informed and were on the ball and letting me know when the car would be ready. So the car is amazing. The acceleration does give you the Tesla grin, kind of that tingly feeling, almost like riding a roller coaster. So really, really cool. Just an amazing car. The interior is beautiful. The autopilot kicked in after about 30 miles of calibrating, and just, cannot believe how amazing the car is. It was worth the wait, and I can laugh about the story now. It was a tough day, but all is right with the world now. But you guys are going to love this car. Thanks again for your kind words, Ryan. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
Oh, I love hearing a happy ending to that story from Eric in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Enjoy that car, Eric. Drive it in good health. All right, a few plugs before I go here. I want to start with Immaculate Reflections. They've got a new thing they wanted me to pass along to you. So, I always mention that they do really awesome protection detailing work on your car, whether it's brand new, whether you've had it for 10 years. But for everybody listening to this, obviously we're talking about your current or future Tesla. They're right here in the Bay Area. If you are a Bay Area person or you're taking delivery at the Fremont factory, you want to look up Immaculate Reflections, irdetailing.com, or search for Immaculate Reflections on Yelp. And then on Instagram, it's instagram.com/immaculate_reflections. And the thing that they wanted me to pass along is not only, of course, they do new car delivery prep, they do paint correction, they do C-Quartz Finest Reserve ceramic coating, paint protection film. one of those things, all of those things, some of those things, whatever you want to do. So here's the new deal. They have kindly offered 10% off any level of detailing, whether it is a basic wash, clay bar, wax service, whether it's a paint correction, whether it's a ceramic coating package, whatever you're getting, they're offering a 10% discount. They also, by the way, offer a military discount. No code or anything needed for that. They just need to show their military ID card or your veteran ID card for the 10% discount. And they tell me too, you can stack them. So if you're you're in the military, you have a military ID, and you're listening to this podcast, you can actually get 20% off. So the coupon code, by the way, for this is RTL10, which obviously indicates Ride the Lightning, 10% off. So drop them a line, RTL10, 10% off whatever you want to do to your current or upcoming Tesla delivery. So drop them a line, look them up. Anyway, if you're buying a new S or X, why not use my cousin Patrick's referral code? That way you can get free unlimited lifetime supercharging. So to do that, you can either give this code to your sales advisor if you're working with someone at a Tesla store. It's Patrick 5008. Or if you're buying your car, you're configuring, you're doing the order online, just type in ts.la/Patrick5008 into your web browser, and that will set you up in the design studio with that code locked and loaded. Patreon, I am on there. You guys know I put a lot of time, energy, love, and effort into this podcast each and every week. If you would volunteer, if you would choose to want to support me in that through Patreon, I'd sincerely appreciate it. It is completely voluntary. It's all opt-in, obviously. Nothing is walled off. There are a few Patreon bonuses, as you've heard me talk about over time, but the regular show still comes at you every Sunday, 9 a.m., whether you are on Patreon or not. You can get the show early on Patreon. You get the Patreon exclusive bonus show. You get the shout out if you're at the $20 level, which I'm going to do for folks in a second. But if you want to consider supporting me, you can do that on the Patreon page that I've got. It's patreon.com/Tesla podcast. Patreon is spelled Patreon. And those aforementioned folks that are supporting me at the $20 level or higher, for which I am sincerely grateful. We call them the Patreon producers because they help get this show produced with their awesome contribution. So I want to shout out all of them. We've got Jeff Bartram, Paul Hussey, DJ Harbaugh, Pete White, Wolfgang Obergen, George Cassiopo, David Brander, Jonathan Wales, Alexi Heft, Lisa Kaz, Michael Opre, Logan Willis, Matthew Parra, as Daisy the Boxer Puppy drinks behind me, Michael Lester, Robert Miracle, Jason Chalukas, Emotion Rentals, Richard Ouellette, Sean Fournier, Tim Hyde, Marcus Mayenshine, Lee Sweet, Lars Hoffman, Orion Coates, Peter Chalet, Harold Plug, Kenneth Martin, Michael Callahan, Rome Strack, David Vakil, Ulrich Lassa, Luke A., and David Kittle. And wow, I got through all of those, and Daisy is still chugging away over there. My goodness. I do want to mention one other business that may interest you. You want to take advantage of an offer from them as well. AbstractOcean.com. They've got a bunch of fantastic Tesla accessories. I would say they sort of specialize in lighting, both interior and exterior lighting upgrades for your Tesla. They support the S, X, and 3. They've got products for all of them. So visit AbstractOcean.com. Take a look at what they've got there. Put anything you like in your cart, and you can use the coupon code RTLPodcast at checkout and get 20% off of your very first order. So give them a visit. Most of you probably subscribe to the podcast. That way it just downloads to you automatically rather than you having to go seek it out every week. If you're not already subscribing, you can do so on just about any of your favorite podcast services, including iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, TuneIn, Spotify, or There's the hosting site, teslapodcast.libsyn.com, where you can grab individual shows or hook up the RSS feed on there as well. I think that about does it. You can follow me on Twitter at DMC_Ryan if you're on Twitter. And you can, as I mentioned earlier, if you're doing sending in a recorded call or you just want to email me about something, you can always email me, the show email address being teslapodcast@gmail.com. All right, another fun week of Tesla news. I had a blast. I've had a really great week here just in life. I'm in an excellent mood recording this week. I just feeling good, man. It's even though the rain outside is trying to put me trying to dampen my spirits, but no, it's been good. I mean, it's still waiting for my Model 3, as many of you are, but life is good, man. It's I'm blessed. I'm very lucky to have everything I have, and including the support of an audience. I mean, I had no expectations when I started this thing. Gosh, what is it? It's I guess 3 years ago, almost 3 years ago. And it's just it's so cool that people actually listen to this and enjoy it and get something out of it, and it's just great. I'm just grateful for everything that I'm lucky enough to have. Thank you all for your support, whether it's through Patreon, whether you're just from listening, your tweets, your emails, all of it. Your support really just makes me feel good. The positivity of this, I know I've talked about this before. I don't want to take up your whole day here, but just as a final thought, it's, I'm very, very lucky to get to work in the video game world. I mean, I cover toys for a living. They're wonderful, amazing toys. The video games many of them are art. I don't want to demean them by calling them toys, but my point is that I'm so lucky to get to work in a field that I get to have fun in. I mean, it is a job, believe me. It's scheduling content and running a website in 2018 where everybody uses ad block and everybody wants everything for free. It's not easy to run the business side of it, but I'm so lucky that I get to work in a thing that I love, which is video games. But I've talked about before, there's so much ridiculous negativity in the community, just toxicity in the video game community. Not everybody. I mean, people that follow me on Twitter, I have great conversations with them, but we're working at IGN. It's a huge gaming website. It's just, I'm always subjected to this, it's just head scratching, the toxicity. And despite the fact that I sit there and go, like, people, we're talking about a wonderful hobby that brings joy to all of us. Why do we have these ridiculous system wars and all this other gross discourse that goes on? But anyway, the whole point I'm trying to make here is that with all, my day job is great, but it has those toxic elements that I have to deal with. But this, Ride the Lightning, it is, because of you guys, it is just 99.9% warm and enthusiastic and positive and happy and fun. And it energizes me. I have to say, I do put a lot of time and energy into this podcast, but I enjoy it, and your positivity, all of everything you give me, it really fuels me. It really, really does, and it makes me feel good, and I love doing this because of that. And it's great. So thank you all so much for your continued support in whatever way you express it. There is no wrong way to express your support for this podcast. Leaving reviews on iTunes, Patreon, like I said, just listening to it, emailing me, tweeting me, whatever it is. It's all good, and I appreciate all of it. And just want to say thanks to everybody. It's been another good week here of Tesla coverage. Hopefully I don't have to cover any more terrible accidents for the foreseeable future. But otherwise, it was another very interesting week of Tesla news. So for a now snoozing, now that she's drank up and drunk up, she's She's had a drink and she's happy. For Daisy the Boxer Puppy, I'm Ryan McCaffrey. Thank you all so much. Happy electric motoring, and I'll see you back here once again next week.